Hey now, good morning. Happy Wednesday, advanced class. Hope you enjoyed the Florenz Ziegfeld review yesterday because we're going to talk about a composer. Like I said, like I promised, just step back about what were these musical reviews and where did the music on these musical review stages, where did it come from? But also, results are in For Gone with the Wind. Very good job. So looking forward to showing the results on Friday. Okay, I think that's it. So, okay, Ziegfeld Follies. Early Manhattan. This is all Ellis Island immigrants, like you looked at yesterday. But where did the music? This is our thing this week is kind of the history of musical theater. How did musical theater get there, and where did it come from? And we've talked a little bit about that. It came from operas, especially operettas. So we'll talk about some of these terms. But before Ziegfeld, and of course Ziegfeld was not a composer. I'm just using, he was an impresario. He was a theater owner. He was a manager, a producer. So let's not get confused. He didn't write any music. All that music was written by other people we've talked about, Jerome Kern, Irving Berlin. Those guys got their start with the Ziegfeld Follies, and then they went on to produce, their own amazing musicals. So before this, though, there was romantic music, right? There was classical music, of course. We know Bach wasn't writing at this time. That was hundreds of years earlier. Classical music, there was opera. So from opera came lighthearted music. And we had songs with Schubert and Schumann. We already looked at that. So it's not like, and we looked at songs going back to the Renaissance. So songs, it wasn't a new thing. But somehow from little operas, lighthearted music operas, came theatrical composition, which leads us to musical theater, right? So we're not really focusing on lyrics and libretto because we could, but this is a music class. So you guys do poetry, with Pascal and stuff. So we're focusing more on the musical style of it. So who am I talking about? Offenbach. So it is, not related to Bach, completely different. And his melodies, which I know which I promised you yesterday that you do know, were very simple melodies that transformed us into a more kind of theatrical, song-like, opera-like thing that will get us into the 20th century musical theater. So, without further ado, let's look at Offenbach. German-born French composer, though. So, and also an impresario as well, like Ziegfeld, although he wrote some beautiful, amazing music. You guys know that song, right? Everyone laughs when that song comes on, but we don't really know where that song came from. We'll talk about where it came from. Composer of the Romantic period. So you want to go over it? Let's go over to Germany. Let's go from Manhattan, where Broadway was starting. Let's go to Germany. Where are we talking about? Well, let's review. We need to look at Offenbach. Offenbach and Strauss are kind of maybe going on at the same time. Strauss, the waltz. We know the Blue Danube. Beautiful music, right? Much different than Wagner's music. Wagner is heavy opera, romantic opera. Strauss is lighter, waltzed, music. And Offenbach's going to be like that too. So Strauss is maybe the closest romantic composer for this classroom. But romantically, Chopin's going on. We looked at Chopin. Arthur Sullivan, the composer for Gilbert and Sullivan's works, we did a class on Gilbert and Sullivan. I mean, they did 14 comic operas from 1871 to 1896. So they're going on a little bit after Offenbach. And they're really, going to influence musical theater a little bit. But we're going a little bit before Gilbert and Sullivan. And then Ziegfeld's there, just because we were talking about him yesterday. I hope it doesn't seem too random because he's not a composer, but he started kind of musical theaters on the stage, as we looked at. So when we get to 20th century music, Irving Berlin, we looked at Jerome Kern, people that I mentioned earlier. Of course, Scott Joplin, not a class goes by without that. Musical reviews, right? Because these weren't really book musicals yet, like I mentioned yesterday. These were kind of gags and storylines because people needed that. They needed escape. Some of them, it's one thing to sit through Wagner's operas in the 19th century, but when you're a poor immigrant coming to America, that's not really, if you need a break, you're not going to listen to a 4-hour or 5-hour Wagner opera. You, after working all day, you want something kind of, quick and funny and fun. So we looked at vaudeville too. I mean, and some of the minstrel shows, and Victorian burlesque. So Offenbach came from a Jewish family, Cologne, and was 6 years old. His father taught him to play the violin, and at the age of 9, he started playing the cello. So made his living early on as a cellist in orchestras. Began composing kind of like comical pieces, comedic pieces almost for again, early musical theater, and managed his own theater near the Champs-Élysées in Paris. And so he presented a series of these kind of small-scale pieces for the stage, which became really, really popular. So it's cool that he had managed his own theater. He put on his own shows, used his own money, and started doing these small little pieces. I mean, he starts in 1855 doing this. So I mentioned the term operetta. He's maybe one of the fathers of operetta. Light-hearted operas, kind of. And people started imitating this well. So this is when music kind of becomes shorter pieces. We looked at shorter musical pieces. So light opera, operetta, spoken dialogue, songs, and dances. And we talked about slimming down, minimalism. This is nothing to do with minimalism, but stripping down these very big things to get it into musical theater form. And operettas were very popular until about the 1930s when musicals really come in. So that's musical theaters that we know today. So, a good, less than 100 years of light opera until it was just like, okay, it's not opera anymore, it's musicals. Mostly Offenbach's musical style is very simple. Melodies are very short. Poulenc had very short melodies, but Poulenc's later. So Poulenc's going to be influenced by Offenbach. Basic rhythm. We're going to hear march-like rhythm. Where do we hear march? Sousa. We already looked at Sousa a few weeks ago. And a lot of 4-bar phrases, where does that come from? Wagner's not using 4-bar phrases. Mozart does 4-bar phrases, but 4 bars, and a lot of it is tonic, the 1 chord, the 5 chord, stuff today that we use all the time in music. Remember the 5 chord, we always need to get home to our 1 chord. So 5-1. So he's using a lot of that. 4-bar phrases and 5-1. All of a sudden music's becoming much simpler and and music that this is how we write today. So we're going to just look at a few pieces because some of them are beautiful. So Orpheus in the Underworld is probably his most famous, and this is where the can-can is, this raunchy dance, the leg kicking. It was hugely offensive. You think of Strauss, the Danube, the waltz, when we talked about the scandalous of holding somebody close, even though everybody wanted to, but okay, I guess we can because it's a dance. It's not completely vulgar. But with this is pretty much the same time, maybe a little bit later. This was very salacious. How fun is it? But he writes this in 1858. So this is actually right before the Blue Danube, I believe. Orpheus in the Underworld, an opera, an operetta about, with Greek mythology. And the can-can, everybody loves that. Can't you hear the march influence, march-like with Sousa? It doesn't sound like a traditional march, but it's very simple and the tonic going back to the 1. There's march-like music, and from march we go to ragtime, of course. So can everyone loves that. Next piece is maybe one of the most beautiful pieces. So simple too. The Barcarolle. This is from Tales of Hoffmann, 1881. He wrote this, but he died before it was finished. It was staged. This is his final opera. Baccarel is a folk song by a Venetian. You know those gondoliers. They would sing, or you could pay them to sing as they take you around Venice. So it's got usually like a 6/8 feel, a waltz, but it's got the rocking just like you were on it. So I mean, it doesn't get much more gorgeous than this. So he wrote a duet for soprano, and then mezzo-soprano just means a little bit lower. So two ladies singing. Probably the most famous Baccarel ever written. You guys have probably heard this. I mean, it's one of the most popular melodies. Again, this is just a melody. This is a melody that could be in a musical easily today or in the 20th century, but this is 1880s. I have to show this scene because it's so hilarious and beautiful at the same time. Life is Beautiful, if you probably remember that. Roberto Benigni, he made this wonderful little movie, about this little family in World War II. Look how cute it is.
Ci sento solo da quest'orecchio io. Principessa, dai, sono qui. Dai, guardami, principessa, guardami. Dai, guardami. Voltati, principessa, voltati. Voltati, principessa, voltati.
So that's the piece, of course, that they're listening to, and later in the movie, when they're in the concentration camp, he plays the piece for her. But it's such a cute little scene. I thought I'd share that. So that's Offenbach. I mean, 100 operettas he wrote in the 1850s, 1870s, about right in that time span. And his operas are still staged today. Had a gift for melodies. You can be a classical composer with beautiful melodies, but he kind of stripped them down where they were melodic songs in these larger operettas. Supposedly a very funny, genial person, loved to be around. A lot of times you can tell that when you listen to somebody's music, you can tell that they probably had a sense of humor, especially if the music makes you laugh. Probably Rossini did, because when the music makes you smile, it's probably an indicator that the composer has a sense of humor. So probably fun to be around. So hope you enjoyed that little advanced dive into Offenbach. So tomorrow we're going to go back to LA. Thanks for watching this. Love you guys. See you tomorrow. Bye.